Let's dive into one of the most pressing questions for the Chargers heading into next season. Who will step up as the starting center? It's been a hot topic throughout the draft, the combine, and beyond, sparking plenty of discussion among fans and analysts alike. Today, we'll break it all down. We'll also take a closer look at Bradley Bozeman's performance as the center this past season. While he showed flashes of promise, there's room for improvement, and the guard position is another area that deserves attention. The offensive line as a whole will be a critical focus for the Chargers this offseason. Let's get started. What's up, buddies? Welcome back. If you are new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We cover all AFC West news here on this channel. When Harbaugh came on as the Chargers head coach, there were a lot of big decisions to make right out of the gate. The center position is one of those key decisions. Picking up Bradley Bozeman in free agency was a solid move to fill that spot, but his performance last season could be summed up as good, not great. This offseason, the focus has to be on improving the offensive line. Everyone knows that the Chargers have two standout tackles. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt are arguably some of the best in the league right now. Their presence on the edges is a significant strength. However, when opposing defenses see a strong tackle duo like that, the natural adjustment is to attack the middle. And that's exactly where the pressure came last season, straight up the middle. While the interior line held its ground at times, it wasn't consistent enough. It's an area that needs to be more solid if the Chargers want to elevate their offense this year. Now let's break down the individual players and their performances, which were good at times and inconsistent at others. Joe Hortiz specifically addressed this issue, and it's worth noting that most mock drafts I've come across suggest the Chargers might target either a tight end or an interior offensive lineman with their 22nd pick. How that plays out remains to be seen, but Hortiz has been very clear. His priority is ensuring the team is prepared and ready to compete. That said, I wouldn't be surprised if the team addresses the offensive line through free agency. Whether it's a guard, a center, or perhaps even both, shoring up that interior line is essential. Adding two guards is also a possibility, and that decision could significantly impact how the team approaches the season. Let's shift the focus back to the offensive line, specifically Bradley Bozeman, the man of the hour. Here's a prediction. When the Chargers brought in Bozeman, it was part of an effort to keep things straightforward for a new coaching staff. When you're starting fresh, simplicity is key, and Bozeman fit that mold. He was brought in specifically as a center, with no consideration for him to play another position. Part of that decision likely stemmed from Greg Roman, who was familiar with Bozeman and believed he could handle the role. During camp, while there was some rotation to cross-train linemen and explore their versatility, a common practice mentioned repeatedly by Jim Harbaugh, Bozeman remained primarily at center. This consistency was crucial. As the center, Bozeman was responsible for making key calls on pass protection, run-blocking schemes, and overall line adjustments. It's a pivotal role, and you don't want to disrupt it midseason unless absolutely necessary. The coaching staff committed to Bozeman early in camp and stuck with him for the entire season. As I've said before, Bozeman's performance was good but not great. He was solid, but there's definitely room for improvement. His Pro Football Focus PFF numbers reflect that, though I sometimes take those metrics with a grain of salt. Toward the end of the season, there were signs of progress, but the big question remains. Is Bradley Bozeman the long-term solution at center? Now, Bradley Bozeman is a free agent, and it's unclear whether he'll return. Joe Hortiz has expressed interest in bringing him back, though I can't recall the exact wording he used. However, the sentiment was clear. Hortiz values Bozeman as someone who provides depth and has shown growth over time. Bozeman has experience playing both guard and center, which adds versatility to his profile, but let's be honest, he's a good, not great player. Looking at the market, it seems unlikely the Chargers will land someone like Trey Smith, who the Chiefs appear determined to keep as they aim for another championship run. While the team might not snag the top guard in free agency, they'll likely bring in someone capable. As for Bozeman, re-signing him might come at a reasonable price, so it's a situation worth monitoring. Now let's talk Trey Pipkins for a second. He's under contract for one more year, but I believe the team might consider moving on from him. If they decide to release Pipkins, it could save approximately $6 million, possibly more. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but it's a substantial amount. Here's the thing. While Pipkins showed promise as a right tackle, the attempt to move him to right guard didn't pan out. The right guard position demands more athleticism since players in that role need to pull, execute various blocking schemes, and effectively close gaps in a run-heavy system. Pipkins took time to develop as a right tackle, and shifting him to guard just didn't work out. So this brings us to a critical point. The the Chargers find themselves in a bit of a predicament. If Pipkins is released, the team saves around $6 million, but that creates a vacancy at right guard. If Bozeman isn't re-signed, it leaves both the center and right guard positions open. Right now, the team's only secured starters on the left side of the line, with a solid left tackle and left guard in Zion Johnson. The next steps will be crucial, and how the Chargers address these gaps could define their offseason. Stay tuned for more as we continue analyzing the situation. So, what's the plan at this point? Do the Chargers go after 2 guards in free agency? Or do they look at internal options? This has been a topic of discussion among many, and it's something I've talked about as well, even going back to when Zion Johnson was drafted. Here's the interesting part. Zion actually has experience playing center. During his time at Boston College, he played multiple positions, including center. There are also a couple of other players on the team who could potentially step into that role. Carson Barnhart and Bucky Williams, both currently on the practice squad, have shown some potential. So the real question is this: do you move Zion Johnson to center, or do you keep him at left guard? Now, I'm not saying that's definitely what will happen, but Joe Hortiz did mention that Zion has been working on playing center recently. Hortiz specifically said, "I think he can do it, and I know he's working on it right now." That's encouraging, and Zion isn't the only option. Barnhart and Williams are young players with opportunities to grow, but Zion stands out due to his experience and versatility. In fact, Zion took a few snaps at center during camp last year, though not a lot, and maybe even a bit in the preseason. So, does it make sense to make Zion the starting center now? Let's break that down. From what I've seen, centers today need to be more agile than in the past. Back in the day, centers were typically larger and more physical. Now, athleticism and quickness are just as important as strength. That's where Zion could be a great fit. He's incredibly strong, athletic, and fast, qualities you want in a center. The more I think about it, the more Zion seems like a solid option to take on the role of center. Let's see how things unfold as the team continues to evaluate its options. So, if Zion already knows how to handle the responsibilities of a center, I'm confident he can adapt to running the position in the NFL. Whether it's pulling left, pulling right, executing GT counterplays, or anything else in a gap run scheme, he has the athleticism and intelligence to succeed. Compared to Bradley Bozeman, Zion is more agile and better suited to the demands of a center in this type of offense. Bozeman, while solid, showed some limitations in terms of speed and agility. Zion, on the other hand, has consistently performed well, particularly in run blocking. In fact, his grades reflect that he's stronger as a run blocker than in pass protection, which fits well with the team's offensive approach. So the real question is, what's the best move going forward? The Chargers are in an interesting position. They could pursue 2 guards in free agency, move Zion to center, and possibly retain Bradley Bozeman as a backup center or guard. Alternatively, they could give opportunities to young players like Carson Barnhart or Bucky Williams. Barnhart has shown versatility, playing up and down the line, while Williams, predominantly a center at Appalachian State, could be a serviceable backup. If Zion takes over the center role, Barnhart might step in as either the left or right guard, depending on where the team sees the best fit. Ultimately, as Joe Hortiz and Jim Harbaugh have emphasized, the goal is to field the best 5 players on the offensive line at all times. That's the bottom line. The second year in this system provides an advantage because the team now has an evaluation tape on all these players. They've seen how each one performs within the system and can better determine their ideal positions. At the end of the day, Zion Johnson could absolutely be that guy for the Chargers. He's incredibly strong. If I'm not mistaken, he was the strongest player at the Combine when he came out. So, there's no question about his physical capabilities. The real focus is figuring out what the team wants to do moving forward. A lot will depend on free agency. The Chargers will want to avoid going into the draft with a glaring need at guard, because that puts them in a tough spot. If you're forced to draft for need, you're at the mercy of how the draft board falls, and you might end up using valuable draft capital to move up for a specific player. It's a better strategy to secure a solid option in free agency, giving the team flexibility during the draft. Now, while it's unlikely that the team will land the absolute top guard in free agency, they'll likely find someone reliable who can contribute. Ideally, they'll target a guard with the versatility to play center as well, allowing for rotation and experimentation to determine the best 5 players on the offensive line. The offensive line is unique because it's about more than just individual talent. These players have to work together seamlessly. Whether they're pulling right, pulling left, or executing other schemes, the best combination of 5 players is what matters most. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.